This is One on One. Ommeed Sathe is Vice President Social Investments at Prudential. Good to see you, Ommeed.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We've been talking to your colleagues at Prudential who are involved in a range of social initiatives from different perspectives. But your piece of this, the social investments piece, explain to us what exactly you're committed to and how it makes a difference.
Sure. So social investments is one of three divisions within Prudential that really works around community engagement and resources. So we have the foundation, we have our local initiatives team that's doing volunteer engagement, working with a lot of our employees to get them involved. And then we have social investments that basically takes a portion of the company's money and invests it in stuff that benefits the community. Education, housing, charter schools, things like that.
But with all the demands, Ommeed, that are out there, how do you make decisions as to what you will fund and what you won't?
Yeah, it's actually, it's really a little bit of a difficult process because we have a double mandate. We're investing the money, so we need it to come back. So
That's right.
We're looking
It's
at
called investments.
Right. So we got to make sure it's going to pay us back, and that's one screen. But the most important thing we're looking for is a deep social impact. We try to support what the foundation's doing around education where we can, community development, particularly trying to get resources into underserved communities.
Give us some examples.
Sure. So we've done a ton in Newark, which is Prudential's home. We've invested in the Courtyard by Marriott and the new Indigo hotels. They're going to be the first new hotels in Newark in 40
Why is that
years.
so important? Explain that to people.
Sure. Obviously, they bring jobs, but I think just as importantly, it transforms the image of Newark. It makes the whole downtown a more livable place. And that kind of cycle of positive impact is what we're looking to really foster. It's not just going to be our money. It's a relatively small amount, but we've got to try to catalyze broader change.
But there's also charter schools.
Yeah, so education has been a long-time focus of the foundation, and we've supported it by financing charter school facilities. As some of your audience probably knows, the charter school funding doesn't include money to support the actual buildings.
That's right.
And so
Capital.
Capital.
Cannot use the money for that.
That's right. And obviously, you've done a tremendous amount around charter schools, and I think we try to support in Newark. We've helped North Star Academy with their new
Great school.
headquarters. And we do a lot of sort of nationally in supporting people trying to fund charter school development.
But the other piece that's interesting to me is we have partners. When I say partners, everyone thinks partners as business partners, but that's not the case with us. We've worked closely and tried to promote Habitat for Humanity. And I know that that's another initiative that you think very highly of. Talk about that.
Yeah, tremendous organization. I think a lot of people have worked and volunteered for Habitat for Humanity, and we actually worked with them to create a really innovative program that helped, at the end of the day, all the Habitat field offices end up taking mortgages back from their homeowners. And
explain that to people. What does that mean? Because I think people go, oh, Jimmy Carter, they build a house.
Right.
It's so much more than that.
So much more than that. And the families, not only do the families have to help build the houses, but they're actually taking back, it's a 0% interest, but they're taking back a very small mortgage to pay off the house. So the families are deeply committed, as well as the volunteers in building it. But at the end of the day, those mortgages need to go somewhere so the local affiliates can keep building more houses. And we actually helped Habitat find a way to basically be able to sell those mortgages and take the money and build more houses.
How much of it on the social investment piece is about teaching organizations about business?
It's definitely a two-way street. I mean, we have some tremendously skilled partners, and I think what we often end up trying to do is to figure out opportunities to marry what we can bring and what they can bring. And
sure.
So it's a shared creative process.
Leveraging.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, explain it though, because a lot of organizations, a lot of nonprofits will say, we need a grant. I mean, we do,
Right.
Look, we're in full disclosure, you know it because you can see where our underwriting comes from. Not the underwriting for our TV program. Prudential is not an underwriter of our TV program. Right. It's an underwriter of one of our initiatives called
Right.
Stand and Deliver, which we do leadership, coaching and training for inner city youth. But the fact is, we seek grants.
Yeah.
But the irony is, in many ways, while those grants are very valuable, it's the relationships that help you leverage those relationships to build something bigger. Money's important.
Right.
The grant's important, right?
Absolutely.
But the leveraging.
Right, and that's absolutely what we can bring. I mean, when the grants, people get $100,000 grants. I mean, we typically make investments somewhere between $1 and $10 million.
Right.
So much bigger kind of investments that, yes, they have to be paid back, but they can allow an organization to go from doing something for one or two people to being able to do it for thousands and thousands of people.
Right.
Great example of that is our work with UNICEF. So
UNICEF. Explain to folks. Everyone hears UNICEF, but I'm not convinced they know what it is. So go ahead.
And I don't think people even have any idea how much UNICEF now does. I always thought of them with the little orange
Yes, right.
things you collect with the coins on Halloween. But it now turns out that they actually buy more than half the world's vaccines come through UNICEF. And they're purchasing vaccines on a global scale. But one of the real challenges they had was that they didn't have working capital. So, you and I know how important it is to be able to have a little working capital to pay for things before some checks come in, and all of us can balance our accounts that way. They didn't have access to that. And we actually work with them to help set up a program called the Bridge Fund that allows them to have what every other kind of business does. But for them, it's so much more important because it's allowing them to get vaccines, get food, get water to kids quicker. And that, is the kind of example, I think, what you're talking about with leveraging, where, it's not a grant, but it allows their grant dollars to go so much farther.
Is there an expectation? I mean, Prudential, the brand is what it is. And a book that I wrote a couple years ago called You Are the Brand, we looked at Prudential as a great case study of a pretty strong brand, a pretty enduring brand. Is there an expectation that while the bottom line has to be a strong bottom line, right?
Yeah.
That you have a responsibility to make social investments?
I think
even in very tough times.
Yeah, I think it's in the DNA of the company. You look at a company that's stayed in Newark now for 136 years.
Could have moved many times.
Yeah, and has been through the cycles of the city, has continually re-engaged in investing in the city, and I think brings that genuine concern for the work we do throughout it. I mean, you see a great deal of engagement in the company in sort of volunteerism, great deal of support for our programs, support at the highest levels of the company.
Help make the New Jersey Performing Arts Center a reality.
That's right.
Way back in the day, I remember talk about social investment. I remember that happened when Art Ryan got involved. I thought to myself, if Prudential had not done that, I mean, a lot of people involved, it may never have happened.
Yeah. No, and the company, I think, continues to support NJPAC in a tremendous way. The current CEO, John Strangfeld, is on the board.
Sure, your CEO.
Yep, and I think continues to be deeply involved in a whole number of causes. They've started to do a lot around veterans.
We'll keep talking off the air. Sorry for interrupting. Ommeed, you're doing great work at Prudential.
Great.
The Rock.
Thank you so much.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Prudential Foundation, the Merck Company Foundation, the Verizon Foundation, the TD Charitable Foundation, PSE&G, the Newark Public Schools, and by the Terrell Fund. Promotional support provided by The Record, North Jersey's trusted source, and northjersey.com. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been produced in partnership with St. Joseph's Healthcare System.